Hello, Nikori. Hello, Dennis. How are we both doing? It's good to see you both here. I think for once, I'm actually prepped. You know? Saying that as I just realized that I forgot one person. Dang it. Switch over. Let's see. Is one gonna work? There we are. There we are. Hello, Plaguemere. Lovely to see you here. What are you doing? Oh shit, I just realized that the chat box is still broken. Damn. Oh man, the switch over to OBS. Oh. Hey, Cam. Yes. Okay. Let's address that. The time change is like really fucking me up because so the way that Discord handles events, right? Like we can schedule events like far in advance now because it's like a recurring thing, which is awesome. And I love that feature. But it doesn't take into account the time zones and like the, well, daylight saving time and all that stuff, right? So what happened is, like, it was scheduled at 8 and it just got pushed up to 9, and then during the day, like, my partner told me, like, hey, it's the wrong hour, so I had to change it back, but it was already, like, pretty far along. So yeah, I'm glad you were paying attention, Kat. Hey Michael, hey Frida, how are you both doing? Dennis is fine, decided to take a break for a week or two. That's good, man. Breaks are healthy. Make sure that you take breaks often. But yeah, I'm doing good. Today has just been a bit of a roller coaster because we are moving out currently, right? So we're in the process of moving out, and we're like in the process of preparing for that too. And there were supposed to be like a lot of people that were coming past, but no one showed up, so that was annoying. And then we were supposed to get rid of our bed, but that didn't happen, so bit annoying today, but hey, let's end the day with looking at some nice art. Micah's doing good, working away, rendering all day. Rendering as in like offline rendering and like just waiting for it to come out, or improving the renders? Hello, Joe. Cat is saying like, yeah, it should be like 10 for me, but now it's 9. Just finished my studying though, and I checked YouTube for an hour before we get started. I was lucky. Ah, yeah. Yeah. Glad you're here. Doing good, just working on many textures. Let's go! That's awesome. There's actually one thing that I wanted to open up the stream with, because we have like a couple of people that have finished work from WIP work in progress. So I always want to check those out as well. And I should honestly do that more often, because I don't look at all the amazing work that has been pushed out by people. So let's do that first. If I set up my stream correctly. Oh, it is correct. Let's do it. Oh, here the chat works well. What? I'm so confused. Hi, chat. So, let's have a look. It's been a while since we had a look at any of these. So, actually see. I think this is a bit too far back. Yeah, we got the cold blood thing. Okay, let's scroll down a little bit. Let's have a look at some stuff here. This is one a mentorship that we recently finished with Sammy. Sammy has been doing some awesome work, and I just love the way that he leveled up like this entire environment. So kind of already seen this, apart from some of the shots here. Yeah. Great little piece of work. I'm just in love with like how the final scene came out. Like the final scene looks so good. Yeah. Awesome stuff. I actually didn't have a look at like most of the breakdowns yet, so let's have a look. Very interesting. Yeah. I love that warp on that little bridge section. I love the historical environments. Yeah, me too. Big fan. It's been a while since I worked on my own environment. It's been a long time. Yeah, this one's a bit gruesome, but like it's cool. Like the way that it's like rendered out, it's awesome. Yeah, love the end result. Cairo dropping some cool stuff for Star Citizen. We got Carl here with little sandcastle. Carl's been working on that for a while. Finally finished it off, so it's great to see. I'm a big fan of the thumbnail. I think the thumbnail is so like nice and soothing to look at. Like if we go to his profile, just look at that. How nice and peaceful that looks. Oh, colors are so nice. Yeah, and then taking like a little bit of extra time to make it into something more than just the environment, right? Like making it look like it's an actual game. Building shit. Oh my god, building shaders. I didn't even see that. So like a sign, like the swaying of the wind. We got some breakdowns over here. Zup and Urvete. Like if you don't know what this means, like this is just like what the hell? Like is this guy like on something, you know? Nice. Yeah. Yeah, there's some great stuff in here. Works really well. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at some other stuff. Speed tree sketches. That's exactly what I read it as. Zup. It is my second environment, a little rainforest. Yeah. We haven't seen this one in WIP Wednesday, but yeah, just having to browse around. It's cool. Oh, I love the little guy on the tree. That's cool. And then we got, yeah, this one we have seen, like I think 2 weeks ago. Adam. Making a little race car track. I love the little, I don't know what they're called, like the little roadside bumps. I don't know what they're called, but they look really cool. I think that's a great addition. Because I think some of the stuff that we talked about would put it like way more into like the cartoony bracket, right? So I think this is like a nice subtle approach by still having the feeling of the racetrack in there. Yeah, loving these like really vibrant projects. Yeah, me too. It's cool. I think also like with vibrant projects, you have the additional benefit of them just like getting more visibility because they pop out so much more in comparison to like all the rest. right? So you get like that vibrancy like hit as well. Let's see. These are looking nice as well. Yeah. Some good stuff in here. Ooh. These shots are pretty cool, actually. Nice textures. It's like just in time for spring. Yeah. This is this made by yourself? Because this is actually pretty cool. Is that like in the environment somewhere? Because that would be cool, right? That you have like a race map or something like that in the environment as well. That'd be awesome. Yeah, some cool stuff, Adam. I love it. Let's play the social media game. Give people likes and follows. This is some professional work from Giacomo. Decagon. I didn't know that Decagon worked on this game. I'm planning to play it. It looks pretty interesting. Cool. A couple of assets here. Adopt the highway. I love that. Yeah, and we got this one from David. I got pushed out as well. Love to see it. It's like a really nice concept as well. You're breaking the hearts of the others you just scroll past? JK, what? Do we miss people? I might honestly like skip some people. I think it's also because we actually had a look at this one yesterday for the stream as well. I think that's why I like subconsciously just skipped that one. Yeah. Like I'm just soaking in all the beautiful art. Extra stuff. Okay. Hudson, I hope that you're not in the lineup, right? Hope I didn't skip past you, buddy. Let's see, the microphone gun. Cool. V3 offers free to use but can't export? Yeah, we actually discussed that yesterday. Where like it's a limitation and you kind of just have to like work around it, right? In some ways, I'm pretty sure that you can kind of work around it. There are always ways. Oh, I have no idea what this is from. Oh, from Beyonce? To Prince. Oh, okay. I had no idea. It's cool, huh? Just a lurker here, not a subscriber. We'll try someday. Yeah, I mean, you're always welcome. Always love more environment artists and definitely helping them on their journey if that is what you wanted to do. Oh, Lillian over here. Lillian dropped their piece as well. Yeah, so we got the day version, right? Like we stripped out like the guards in the back and it kind of has like a more serene feel. Then we go into like the night version and it kind of feels like, uh-oh. There's gonna be some stuff happening like pretty soon. I like that. Well executed as well. I like the little gates that you have made, right? Where you can still see like strips, like little sections of light. Also like lighting this one up as well. It's cool. Yeah. Yeah, we actually talked about this one like in a couple of WIPs, I think. It's cool to see it done though. It's awesome. Like a nice breakdown of the trim sheet. We got the modular kit. This one is so tricky to showcase, right? Because like if you look at the modules themselves, like they don't really have like the same impact as like the environment, right? But like this is exactly what you're gonna see in like a lot of games, right? If you strip out like a lot of the additional layers on top of it, this is what like the base modules are gonna be in a lot of cases. And just by like adding set dressing and like adding layers on top of it, like you get that additional layering. WIP videos, there's a link on YouTube. Oh, I think Kat is just referring to the WIP Wednesday videos. Like we've done, I think we talked about Lillian's work last week and the week before that as well. Unless you're talking about like Lillian, like putting up their own YouTube videos of their process. That would be cool to see as well. Yeah. This is well executed. Like, and also like this already came in like really late in the process. So I was already like amazed by just like the base that we could look at. So super nice work, Lillian. Great stuff here. Let's do that as well. Keeping up with you in the future. Yes, so good. Then we got this one from Sammy as well. So we we kind of started out with Sammy and then we ended up with Sammy as well. I think we had a look at this one last week, if I can't remember. If I remember correctly. Got like a little breakdown here as well. Yeah, the wireframe is kind of tricky because it looks like pretty bad in Unreal, like honestly. But it's good, right? Like you give people some information. I think in this one, it's like a small tweak. You could potentially get rid of like the depth of field on the wireframe itself. But I like the presentation of it though. Daniel's coming in with a question. Oh yeah, for people in the chat, feel free to ask any questions. Like if I can help you with anything at all in your artistic journey, like feel free to ask and I will gladly discuss it. So, is there a way to add extra details to a trim sheet without RGB masking? The texture is feeling kind of flat. Kind of depends on what details you want, right? Like you could have like just normal decals as well. It depends on the surface area that you want to cover, right? RGB masking is a good way to get it done relatively quick with just like the additional step that you have to take, right? And if you want to have it, probably a better way of explaining it is if you want to have it like asset dependent, and if you want to have like a lot of control per asset, that's probably the way to go. If you have something that is like very unique, very standalone, and you have it like textured with a trim, I would honestly go for like less versatile ways, like but more easy to implement. Like for example, vertex paint or maybe some decals that you just project onto the surface. Yeah. But if the texture is kind of feeling flat by itself, maybe it's just looking at the base texture that you give it to, right? If you mostly want variation in edge details, the edge details should mostly come from the trim. And then the variation, yeah, you have to do that with like RGB masking or decals. Yeah, this is looking really nice, Sammy. Oh, posted 3 hours ago. Dang. Hot off the press. I like it. I would definitely say like keep up the presentation style that you've gone for, right? This is like significantly above like all the other stuff that I've seen on your portfolio. Looks so good. So yeah, keep that up. Thank you as always. No worries. Thanks for the question. Okay, I think it's time to jump over to some actual current work in progress stuff then. Unless there's someone else here. No. Okay. Let's switch it over then. Oh, hold up. Do this one instead. Yeah. There we go. I'm also a bit confused about the decision with RGB and vertex. I've used mostly vertex painting in my scene now, and I'm wondering if I should have done RGB masked instead. Yeah, RGB mask, like they definitely have the opportunity to add more to your scene. But they're also like a bit more complex to set up, right? Let's actually have a look at your work first then. Right, let's switch over to you, Kat. And let's start there. Because you're saying that you were confused about like vertex painting. Let's actually have a look. How many to be on Extend team? Is it only you? No, so we have a couple of people that are kind of working on like a voluntary or freelance basis, depending on what they do. So there's a couple of volunteers that help us with running the team challenges. So those are like big challenges where we put teams together of 5 people. And currently there's actually one that is going to end up like this weekend. So that's going to be like the massive finale of everything. And then we have like a person helping us out with the workshops as well, like organizing the workshops. But then, yeah, most of the other stuff like basically falls under my my domain, which means like social media, like automation, website, the streams, setting up like all the graphics, like maintaining the Discord for the most part. That's all run by me. Yeah. Oh, I don't mind waiting, but yeah, thank you. No worries. I haven't used any RGB masks at all. Not sure if that's a mistake. No, you don't have to use them, right? It is just like it's a very current thing, right? Where a lot of people are talking about trim sheets and RGB masks, but you don't have to use them necessarily. It just depends on like how much texture layering you want on your assets, right? But you don't have to use them. Because you can still use like a more traditional way of working where it's you have your trim sheet, right? And then you use like vertex paint or decals, or some like additional things to layer additional like texture layers on top of it, right? That's like the more traditional way. But if you want to have like more in-depth layering, if you want to have more specific layering, then you will have to look into like RGB masking. But it's not something that I necessarily like want to say that people have to go into, especially in the beginning, because it is complex and there are like a lot of ways that if you want to do it efficiently, you have to really get into like the technical nitty-gritty of things, like setting up like the shaders, and also like having like a good pipeline where you like bake out your maps and then you pack them, all that kind of stuff, right? Is yeah, there is a lot that goes into it as well. RGB masking the feature in Unreal? No, not specific to Unreal. You can use it like it's it depends on like the shader that you set up. So it's like engine agnostic. You can use it in anything you want. Let's see. How many to be on Extend team? Oh yeah, I read that already. And you're the one who started it all? Yeah. It started small and it kind of grew over time. Yeah, that's like more the traditional way here. Right? And then you can kind of like expand that as you want to go, right? Like for the RGB masking on top of it. But you definitely don't need it. I would say if you want to keep like your scene like a little bit more clean as well, right? Like you don't need like RGB masking. Yeah, if you want to have like a very grimy, dusty world, then yeah, something like that could definitely be like the way to go. But there's so many tricks, right? Like there's so many ways of adding like additional layering to it. For example, like what we talked about before, the ZUP shader, which basically stands for Z up shader, because basically that shader is going to look at like any surface that points up and is going to do something to that surface. So you could use that for like dust on like items, for example, right? Because if you rotate your object, like it's always going to be on the top surface, so it kind of makes sense for like dust to settle and always be on the top surface, right? That's what the ZUP shader stands for. Michael is asking a question as well. I have 2 projects from 2 or 3 years ago. Textures I still feel proud of, but the execution and the beauty of the beauty shots are weak. Would you suggest reworking or plow ahead with new projects? That is a great question. If the execution of the beauty shots is weak, it kind of depends on what you're talking about, right? If it is like slight composition tweaks, if it is like slight lighting tweaks, I would definitely just like redo them and like make it like way better, because that is like minimal effort for like maximum gain, right? If however you have to go back and like remodel and retexture and like a bunch of stuff, I would just like go on ahead and focus on like new projects. It always depends on the way that I always look at it is like the amount of effort that you put into it. Like there is like a balance between it, right? Because at a certain point, like you could spend like that time just making like a new project that's going to be like better from the ground up, rather than trying to like cobble together like a good project out of like a pre-existing one. It's a slow blend mode. No, but you could potentially look at it like that. Like they're kind of similar. Oh my god, it's Tim. Hey, Will. Let's have a look then here, right? I'm gonna look at the WIP thread, and we're gonna see. So let's get some context here. Any tips on how can I improve on like general feeling of the scene? I want my focal point to be the left big potion tank. Okay, so this guy over here. Cool. And then the secondary focal point, so this is going to be like number 1, right? And then the secondary focal point should be like this one. Okay. Let's start with that, right? So if you want the focal point to stand out more, we also need to bring it forward in some sort of way, either by doing either the placement, the texturing, or like something with the shape or the size of things, right? Because right now what you're doing is like, oh, I want people to look here, but then you kind of cover it up with like a bunch of stuff in front of it, so it doesn't feel like we should be looking at it necessarily, right? However, if you then add like a texture on top of it and it feels like it's like a very standout color, right? Like I'm just gonna throw a random color out there. Like let's assume it's gold, right? It's gonna be like more impressive than anything else in the scene, and that's gonna help with bringing it out more. So basically the way that you can always look at bringing something forward is you have like a multiple levers that you're like in control of, and it kind of depends on what you need for the situation, which lever you have to pull. So I would really think about it that way. If you like the composition, if you like that the barrel is like in front of it, for example, then you have to bring it out in a different way, right? Because that lever, you can't pull that one anymore. So think about it in that way. What I would say though, if if you want the focus to be on like the main barrel, currently the majority of the focus is going towards like the most lit area, right? Which is gonna be like this area over here in general. I think, let's quickly double check. Yeah, this is the latest one. Right, so because we have like a lot of contrast between black and white, we have like a lot of focus going to like the area in the back, right? So again, like we need to think about the levers that we're pulling, right? And now the lever of like light is like pushed all the way to the backs. So we need to think about that one. What I would do, or like a potential solution here, could be that we definitely need to reduce like the amount of light that's going towards the back, right? So you can do that by like covering up like a bunch of these windows with more foliage so that more light gets blocked as it is coming in, right? And then you could have like more light coming in around the area that you want people to look at. So let's recap this little section here. So the focal point, like you need to think about like the levers that you can control, right? Like the control levers. Let's call them that from now on. Right? And then those levers, like they can consist out of like the light, the shapes, like the amount of texture detail. Like there's a whole bunch of levers that we have control of. But the simplest one is actually, if you want to see if something stands out, it's usually based on how light or how contrasting an element is in your scene. And a way to test that is by squinting your eyes or like blurring the image. So let's see. So if we were to like blur this, this is like a really good way of seeing like where the attention is going to go. Right? Because again, we now see that most of it is going to go to the back, right? But we want it to be like around here somewhere. So something to keep in mind. The blur or the squint test is what we call this. Sorry, I should have edited the first part out. I did the blocking of the light for the first one to give the second one more attention and have it as the only focal point. Oh, let's have a look here then. Wait, so let me read that again. I did the blocking of the light for the first one to give the second one more attention and to have it as the only focal point. Oh, okay. So we're not looking at like the foreground anymore. We want people to look at the background then. That's what we're saying here, right? The issue that I see with that though is that a lot of the visually interesting stuff is going to be happening here. Oh. No. What happened here? Let's just blur you again. How do you even write squint? Squint test. What I was saying though is that you're gonna end up with like a lot of really interesting assets here, right? Because you have the book, you have like all these like little interesting bits of like these little interesting apparatuses just on the table here, right? So, and if we're then gonna push people to look all the way to the back, that's gonna feel like really unnatural because a lot of the visually interesting stuff is gonna happen here, right? So I don't think it makes sense to try to pull people in towards the back where like nothing really is happening, where like in contrast, like a lot of the interesting stuff is happening in the foreground. Right? So I would definitely focus on this, making that a focal point, for sure. unless you do something else with the back frontal like focal point, right? So what we could do there is, instead of making it like currently a tree with like some broken planks, I think, right? Maybe that tree is like taking over the distillery itself, and like you can see like the big this big distillery vat basically being entangled by like the roots or something like that, right? So that we have this like maybe interesting story of like the roots are coming in and they're kind of like attacking this like station, right? And it's kind of taking over. And then we're kind of pushing like the visual interest more towards the back, right? Because that's where like a lot of it is going to be. That doesn't mean that you can't have anything in the foreground, right? But we need to be careful about like the levers that we're going to be pulling. But yeah, I would say, so you're saying I wanted to make a lot of strong defining branches in a tree. Yeah, I think get those elements in first then, like in a really quick fashion, and then see if it makes sense, if it still makes sense to, if it still makes sense that we're looking at the back of it, right? Oh, like roots taking over more of just the table? That could be cool. I was thinking about that too. Yeah, it's just like, this is one of the levers that I'm pulling, right? If you want to focus like more in the background, right? If you want people to look at the background more, we need to basically take the interesting elements that people are going to be looking at from the foreground to the background and put them there, right? So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Just like move a lot of the interesting equipment to the back and have it like entangled in the roots or something like that. Could be interesting. Let's see. For color grading, is it better to go for green bluish or more sunshine and lighter? That depends on the mood that you want to sell. I would honestly not really worry about that now yet, because there's still like foundational issues like the composition, right? And like the storytelling of it. Like we need to refine that still. But yeah, it depends on the mood, right? So like if you want to have something that feels like really somber and it's taken over, and like humans have left this place in like years and that's why nature is taking over, right? Think about like the mood that you want to convey, and then think about like the color that matches to that mood, right? So for example, something that's going to be like very blue centric is oftentimes going to be like more depressing or like more evocative of sadness, right? Whereas if you want to invoke like a place, this is like nature's taking over, but like people are like embracing nature, right? And they get to work together with nature. You probably want to have lighter colors, right? To convey like a really happy mood as well. So the color correction, it all depends on mood, right? And mood has like specific colors or like emotions, right? I always bring up like a very this happens in real life too, right? And like one of my favorite examples of this is fast food chains, especially in the 90s. They used to have like a lot of red because what they wanted you to do is go in, order food, and get out quickly. And they used colors and like the just like the aggressiveness of red to, and then combine that with like the design of the whole place, right? To get you out quicker so that you would come in, you would eat, and then leave immediately. Rather than if you compare that to like a very cozy restaurant, like they would barely use red, but they would have like more soothing colors, right? A lot of really cool stuff that you can do with like colors, and if you really start digging into it, that's like the bread and butter of what we do, really. So definitely look into that, for sure. There are like color wheels that are like linked to like the most common emotions, so that would be like a good starting point. Any additional tips or feedback that you might want to point out on improving the scene would be really helpful. I feel like currently there's too much noise in the scene, or do we think it's okay? Like IKEA. Exactly. Yeah. All those colors are like very intentful, right? I think with IKEA, it's it's slightly different because it is the Swedish brand, right? And it has the Swedish colors because of that reason. But yeah, definitely look around, right? Like you're definitely gonna see this, like if you start paying attention to it. Yes. So you're asking the question if there's too much noise. I don't think it's necessarily like an issue with. I don't think it's necessarily an issue with noise. I think it has more to do with like contrast and yeah, how undefined like the focal point currently is. That's my gut feeling. There is like noise, right? But I don't think it definitely comes from like the asset shapes or something like that. It's more about like the lighting and maybe the texture that are playing around with it. So what I would definitely do is to reduce that noise, right? Is have this is something that I wanted to bring up as well, is the windows. I feel like we need to do something about the windows because I feel like I've led you down a wrong path where we talked about like making the windows opaque and then still having the light coming through. Currently, that is not working at all. And that is my bad because I definitely gave the recommendation to look into that, but it's really not working. So what I want to propose instead is let me skip a number here. We're going to number 4. What I want to propose instead is have glass windows. So make the windows glass, but I want you to look into like a very specific thing here. It's called a spiral blur. What a spiral blur is gonna do, I'm gonna show you like an environment from a buddy of mine. See if we can bring it up. Where are you, Will? Okay, let's see. Hello? So, got my buddy Will over here. We're going to be focusing on like the windows that he did. I don't know if there's like a good screenshot. For example, this guy, right? This is a look that you could go for without having to necessarily build like a whole background behind it, right? Because it's going to be blurred out anyway. That's maybe like an interesting look that you could potentially go for. I'm not talking about like the cubes and like the rasterization on the windows, right? I'm more talking about like just having the background blurred. It might look very untypical, right? Because usually in that fantasy time period, you wouldn't necessarily have like blurred windows. So maybe let's think. So I'm gonna change it to 2 options instead. So option A would be spider blur way, right? Where we're blurring out the windows. Option B is we just make the windows like really dirty. This is definitely gonna be like a little bit harder, right? What I'm imagining is if you have like a lot of foliage, there's gonna be like a lot of moisture and like a lot of like moss and like dirt just like on the windows themselves, right? So that could be like an interesting look that we could achieve there. Basically what I'm trying to do with this is I'm trying to make the windows feel realistic without having to do... Is that how you write it? Like without having to do the background. So these are like the 2 things that I can come up with right now that might be interesting to explore, but we need to do something about the windows because currently they don't really look good. It kind of feels like they're still like in block out phase, right? Again, my bad. I'll own up to that for sure, but yeah, we need to fix something about it. Maybe you could use like vertex paint or decals to add additional dirt and moisture. Yeah, for sure. Whatever works, right? Like play around with it and find a technique that works best for you. Let's see. And then on the noise front, right? Like I want you to figure out like the light first. Light in the focal point. And then if it still feels too noisy, we need to have a look at like the individual assets. The scale. And then the textures. That's probably the way that I would look at it. Hudson is saying, I vote for a happier mood. Yeah, I think you could really lean into like the fantasy, like fairy tale setting with this one, right? Michael's saying solar punk. Could be cool. Could be cool. There's options here, right? Kind of feels like solar punky-ish already, right? Let's see. I'll be finishing the last two props really soon. I just have my exam week right now. My mouse wheel broke. Oh no! Sorry to hear that. I hope you I hope you figured that out because that's annoying. Yeah. Yeah, no, cool. I think honestly, like the biggest thing is definitely like the focal point, right? Like we need to really define the focal point and make sure that we're like watching the space that you actually want people to watch. Right? That's where I would start, and then we can build up the additional layers as we need them. So yeah. Thank you so much, Kat. Hope this was helpful. You know, there's a lot of stuff that we talked about today, but yeah. Digest it at your own pace and look into some of the things we discussed, right? Oh, you got a new mouse already? Awesome. That's cool. I was gonna say, for me, it's more of a magical feeling, like a Harry Potter environment. That's a good inspiration as well. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's jump on to next person. So I think we're gonna do Hardy next. So Hardy had like a nice brick material. This is really helpful. I keep all the insights in mind. Thanks so much. No worries. Thank you for your support and for the awesome work that you've been doing. It's been nice to follow along with it. Next up, like I was saying, Harley. Let's have a look here. Kind of finished with this? Question mark? Not really sure. I kind of feel like it is a bit more interested in the ground and the brick interaction, but could be something I could add later. Yeah. So this is an interesting one, right? Because I feel like knowing your art style and what you kind of want to go for, it kind of... That's what it comes down to, right? Because I can give you like a lot of feedback, but I know that you have like a really different opinion on like what is normally like the feedback, right? And I feel like a lot of the feedback that I read on like when you shared it on Twitter was people saying like let's clear here. So it was people saying like, hey, I want more like color variation in the brick. Right? So color variation. And it's like, yeah, I can see that. That totally makes sense to me. But it also depends on how much you want that yourself. Right? So this comes down to like, what do you think is going to be in line with your personal art direction? Or not, right? You have to decide that for the feedback that you get. right? Because I can definitely agree, like the color variation would look really interesting if you just have like more of it. And then Hudson is saying, first look, lower the gradient. Some of the bricks are dipping so much down already. Yeah, see, that's also one of those things where I can see that, but then I also kind of like it too. Tip, use a gradient map to lower the dark values. Oh, yeah. It's a good tip. But yeah. So this is where it gets really hard to critique because I know that you're so out there with your art style. And this is honestly the pain that you have to like suffer through if you want to do like something more unique, right? Because if we actually have a look at like the image here, like I kind of like the color variation that we're getting from the bricks right now, but maybe that's not what the final image here is, right? Because if this is the color variation that we're seeing, that could be good enough for me. So I'm probably gonna... Don't really have too much to say on this, honestly. Because, yeah, it just comes down to what you want to do with it. To be honest, Substance Designer has endless techniques, so my answer is not the right answer. Oh, this applies to like anything in game art ever. There's so many ways of doing it. That's why I struggle with ever saying like this is the way to do it, right? And you can constantly hear me like elaborate and give context because there's always multiple ways of doing it, and none of them are really wrong, right? It just depends on the situation and the context of the question. Hey, second favorite, welcome back. It's been a while. Missed you, man. It could be what you're going for. Yeah, I think so too. And this is only because I have the context of what came before it, right? Because otherwise, like I like what's happening here. So yeah, I'm not sure if that was too helpful, Harley. Maybe what could be interesting is if you want to give me like a reference for the next time, because the one thing that does come to mind right now is that if it is supposed to be more in line with the other environment that you're going with at the moment. Oh, wait, am I completely confusing people here? Hold up. I might be completely confusing people here. Let me double check this real quick. Yeah, I'm really confusing people. Never mind. So, basically scratch a lot of what I said before. Let's see if there's more additional context in here. Yeah. Okay, you want to make it look more hand painted. This is from like a while ago, right? But I love what you had going here. I don't know if this is... Let's see. I kind of love what you had going in this screenshot. Just in terms of the color, right? Like bringing out that color a little bit more. It's going to be really, really interesting. So I would definitely, because, okay, here's what we're going to do. Color variation is really good, right? But I think this sort of color variation like levels it up even more, because if we look at a color variation that you have right now, right, they all stay in like the same hue, right? But if you want to add like your own spin to it and make it feel like more painterly, you kind of have to have something that kind of deviates from like the spectrum of colors that you're already working in, and it's going to give it like more depth as well. So okay, that was kind of chaotic. I hope you followed me through that, Harley. Yeah, that's the main thing that I would say. like think about including other colors that you wouldn't necessarily expect into a texture like this, right? And it's gonna add to the depth of the color. Yeah. Obviously, I think what you also need to do is always have a look at it in the engine and in context, right? Because if you then apply that to your building, it could look really bonkers, right? And too repetitive. So it's always balancing the two. Whereas you might even need like additional variations in the engine, like in Unreal, to really get the look that you're going for. Because you could have like a really wildly varying one and then just blend between the two, right? So you have like a more like an easy to look at pattern, and then you have like spots where there's like lots of color variation. You could kind of paint them in a way. Because you can only go so far with a tileable, right? Because the more unique you make it, the more it's going to look like a tileable. And you don't want that to happen. So yeah, a little bit of a chaotic one, but I hope that helped, Harley. Let's get back on track here. So, Cat, we already talked about that. I think next one is going to be Joe. Get Joe's work on the screen. We're going to look at like more images as well. But I first want to have a look at the chat here too. Hey, great to be here. I graduated. Oh, shit. Oh, and then got too depressed. Oh, sorry. Dang, this is a fucking roller coaster, man. But I'm back. That's good. I hope you took like enough time to like recover, right? I know that the artistic journey is like, it's really personal. It's really tough. It probably takes way longer than most people expect. So I'm glad you're back and taking your time on it. So you're also doing like the Project Titan Epic Art Project. Yeah, it's like the game jam thing that's hosted on ArtStation. How is that going? Because I want to keep an eye on it, because I think it's going to be super chaotic, just from like an organizational perspective, right? And I actually want to talk to some of the people that are going to be giving feedback too, because we have worked with them before. It will be really cool to like reconnect and see how the project is going, because I'm super interested in the project. Yeah, I just want to hear about the chaos and maybe learn about like some of the organizational tricks as well. Because honestly, I was thinking about like potentially this would not be possible at this scale, right? That's why Epic are doing it. Because source control and then having like a server to run it on, those in combination is really freaking expensive for the scale that they're doing it at. But I was kind of thinking about like a team challenge where you have like a larger team, but you're all building on the same project or something, right? So it's sort of like what's going on right now. Oh, Frida was saying, I feel like some subtle greens and whites for like moss and dirt could be really interesting. Oh, yeah, on Hardy's material, right? Yeah, that could be cool. I totally agree. You could even have like a little bit of white stuff, just like as like bird poop or something like that, right? But yeah, it kind of goes back to what we were saying before, right? Like the more unique you make it, the more careful you have to be about like how tileable the actual texture is. But yeah, definitely some good suggestions. That's awesome. It was super chaotic at first, but we called it nailed down about a weekend. Yeah, that's awesome. I'll need to catch up on the live streams. I think the first one is coming this Friday, right? Need to keep an eye out. Okay. Oh, sorry, Hudson. Hey, Tim, genuine question. When do we need to apply a height map on those materials rendered when 95% is just going to be a normal map? Is it just for showcase and palm application? Yeah, it's purely for showcase. Like, honestly, a lot of what you're going to see on ArtStation is purely for showcase, and then once you get into the industry, you're never going to get to that same... Well, don't want to say never, you're barely going to get to the same quality level that you do in your personal work. I know it seems kind of like weird, but like all the stuff that you see on the front page on ArtStation, like it's way above what is currently expected, especially for you as like a junior artist, like to get in. Well, not to get in, let me rephrase that. Like for getting in, you definitely need to adhere to the quality bar that's set by ArtStation, right? Because that is like the job market, right? Like ArtStation and other platforms, mostly ArtStation, that is the job market. Those are the people that you're going to be competing with. And then what happens is that companies can really pick from like the applicants that they have, and because the bar is so high, you can't not do like all the tricks in the books to get like more visually pleasing stuff on your portfolio, right? I always worry about like if I'm doing enough to even get an internship. It's both inspiring and also crazy to see so many amazing works. Yeah, but the thing is, and this is something that my grandma said, right? Like, the only thing that you can do is just do your best, right? And if you're constantly doing that and you're really honest about like where you are and like how you need to improve over time, like those steps and the consistency of that work is gonna get you there. Right? Because there's so many external factors that you don't necessarily have control over that are even invisible to you. Right? For example, I'll give a stupid example, right? Let's say you're in a pool of 10 people, and those 10 people, like those 9 other people, they have like way better work than you, but they live abroad and they need a visa. Like they're gonna pick you over that, depending on the skill level difference, right? But that's something that you can't see from the outside, right? So it's very easy to like get worked up and that you're thinking, well, I basically said the same thing, right? That you're in the same job market, but there are still like separations within that job market. But yeah. Just keep doing what you're doing, Kat. Like what I'm seeing here, like is really inspiring to see for me as well. Like you really seem to be pushing yourself, you know? You're putting in a lot of time. You're here, right? Like it shows that you have a commitment. Yeah. If you love doing it, then it's always worth it. Not applicable to everything. Well, yeah, thanks for that, Hudson. Not to be scary, but currently by 10 he means 200. So this is an interesting thing because this is something that I discussed like a couple of times in the last couple of weeks. People get too carried away by the number that they see on like LinkedIn applications. And I've seen it from the opposite side. And we've even talked about this in the community where like at least 60 to 70% are throwaway applications, which means that they don't even have like a relevant portfolio or a portfolio at all, right? At that point, they're just like, hey, I want to work in games. I'm just gonna try to apply. And that's it, right? They have no relevant skills. They've never opened a 3D program, or maybe they did like 10 years ago, whatever, right? But it's people that are not even close to like the level that you would need, right? So that leaves like a really small percentage of people, of even those people, like a decent percentage, like they then also like have experience, but it might not be relevant experience to the position that you're applying for. So it really cuts it down from that initial 200 to like a handful of applicants, right? And it also depends on like the size of the company, and also like how desirable the position is, and you know, like all that kind of stuff too. I feel like honestly, like whenever people like attach numbers to it, right? Or like, well, not people, but like platforms or companies or whatever you want to call it, right? Like you can see that with likes, you can see that with the amount of applicants. Like it is just a tool to get you to do something like way quicker than we normally use it, right? Like it's a pressure mechanic. Like it's like an incentive to like, oh, maybe I get more likes, or in the case of like applications, it's like a deterrent, right? But don't let that stop you, because you never know who's in that pool. And you might miss any, yeah. What is it saying? Like you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take? And I get it. Like it's not easy now, right? I would definitely say that like all that stuff can still be true, and that also can mean that we're still in like a downturn of the industry currently, right? I think both of those things can be true. But yeah. Don't let that scare you away from applying. I would hate to see that. I'm working on an indie game to get something published, but it's overwhelming. Yeah, just keep doing what you're doing, right? I would honestly say, in a case where it gets overwhelming, like take a step back, right? Like do less of the hobby stuff, right? Well, I call it hobby stuff, but we all know how it is. Like do less of like the ArtStation challenges, right? And just focus on the indie game. Like make that stuff really look good, and then you have like professional experience. Yeah. Because I mean, I know how it is, right? I'm always super impatient. Always have been, and I probably always will be, especially when it comes to like pushing myself. Why, I get where this is coming from. But at a certain point, you just have to realize like, hey, look, like if I keep pushing, like I'll get to a point where I can't push anymore. Right? So there has to be like a level of sustainability there as well, where sometimes you have to take a step back. And I mean, not to come back to it, but like you realize that yourself as well recently, right? Second favorite, so yeah. Use that as like a benchmark of like, hey, I pushed it too far. I know where like the upper limit is. I'm gonna see that I'm gonna stay well underneath like that breaking point, right? So take it as like a learning experience. That's the way that I would see it. That's why I study 3D during my spare time. Makes me feel fulfilled. Maybe I'll try to get a job with it. If not, then I'm still okay with it. As long as I earn money. Yeah, yeah. We got this, guys! Yes, cat, let's go! What I'd love to hear. Yeah, this is the thing. Like, if there's like any other questions that or like any situations where you're like, hey, can you explain this? Let me know, and I'll try to clarify, right? Whatever helps in your journey. Because yeah, it is not an easy one. But you'll get there. Okay. Let's have a look at some work from Joe then. So, Joe is... I think I'm going to remove the 2 secondary angles. Replace them with a render from Marmoset Unreal. Because it was being too difficult to get the focus correct. And we got like a whole bunch of main angles. I'm gonna show this on the screen as well. Alright, so we got a whole bunch of angles here. And then if you have any feedback on these images, that would be very appreciated. And what things other than the render should be included. Okay, if you do want to know more about that, like have a look at my portfolio reviews, right? I think they're like the best source. Oh, I just realized that you can't see any of it. But yeah. So I would look at the portfolio reviews. I'm gonna get to that, Joe, because I think that's like the thing that I initially saw is like, sorry for the photo spam. I think there's just like so many images that you don't need. I would honestly keep it super simple. And I would have like your main image, right? Maybe like a secondary image or like a, oh, here we go again. So I would definitely keep like your main shot, right? And then maybe like a secondary image or like a video or something like that. And then I would just do the breakdowns. because I don't think that like any of these shots are necessarily as good as the main image that you're trying to say or trying to set, right? So if we have a look at like all these images again here, like these are like in comparison like really boring compared to looking at something like this, right? This looks great. So what I would do is I would just really sell the main image here, and then use something like this that has like a wireframe on it, and just like broaden it a little bit, and then do like a texture breakdown or something like that, right? Keep it simple. Because what I see a lot of people doing is that they're so happy with their work, right? As you should be. But then you want to include like all the images. Well, I'm not saying that you wanted to do that, but they add way too many images for what needs to be there, right? What you could potentially look into for this is maybe do something like this, where you have like a turntable showcasing like the wireframe and then switching between like the different texture layers, right? Something like that. That makes it like a bit more interactive and like interesting to look at. Yeah, I saw some on ArtStation that had like 50 different images, so I thought it was an okay thing. No, it really isn't. Like, there is honestly no way that I can say that it's ever a good thing to have so many images. Because what that also, like, if you look at it from like a recruiter perspective or like an artist perspective, right? If you add like all the images, then I know that you can't be selective with your work and you don't know what looks good and what doesn't, right? Because you're just like, I'll just add everything. I think normals look quite weird in Marmoset. Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, I have no idea really about Marmoset, especially about the normal render. But if it does, if it really does, if it's really like off-putting, maybe try to find like maybe present it in Unreal or something like that. I don't know. But I don't think it's gonna look that bad necessarily. Not too sure. So. First one is too many images. Just too many. Like, less is more. This is more, right? So I would say, what did we say? Like one main and then like two to say 1, 2, 3. 1 to 3 additional ones, right? And then you go into like your breakdown where you can have like, let's say 1 to 2 images for like a breakdown. I was going to have a turntable with normal lighting and a wireframe and then a texture breakdown. Turntable with normal lighting and a wireframe and then a texture breakdown. Yeah. Like, whatever you have to do for the breakdown, right? I don't know what specifically you did, but just make it look like interesting. For the breakdown, what you need, right? I want to see your UVs. I want to see your textures. And also the amount of texture sets, right? Because I think you have like a couple. So you have UV textures. You want to show off your poly count. And then your wireframe. Those are like the things that you need to have in your breakdown. Let's see. I've only ever used Marmoset for rendering, but it can also be used for baking too. Oh yeah. Yeah. So I would honestly take something like this and then just like extend the framing of it, right? To make it like really easy. And then just have like your different texture sets like right next to it. Well, different textures, right? And then you can have like your poly count is like 15k. What else do you need? Like 3 times like 2k textures or something like that, right? And then you have your base color, normal, roughness, metallic. Like just like a little breakdown like that, and then still doing like the turntable that you had in mind, right? And then switching between like all the different things that you want to show off could be really good. The only thing that you're gonna have to figure out is how you're gonna show off like the multiple texture sets, right? Because it would be really awesome if you can find a way to separate them off. So what I'm immediately thinking, and this is gonna take like a little bit of work, right? Is that, let's say, for the sake of example, right? Like you have the wheel as like a separate texture. I would honestly make the rest of the gun, I would make that gray and then only show the textures on the texture set that you're showing off. So that we get like a separation of like, oh, okay, this texture set is only on these parts, right? It doesn't have to be like a gray material. It can be whatever you want as long as we get like a separation between the two. And it could make for like a really interesting presentation, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I would assume so, right? And in Marmoset, you can just drag and drop. So that's probably going to be pretty easy for you too. I think it's going to take a little bit of time to render like a turntable. I don't know how easy that is, right? Render like a complete one with like the whole thing. Render like a complete one with like a specific thing. And do that for like every texture set. And then you just have to like edit them all together, right? Where you like swap between them. So yeah, there's going to be like a little bit of video editing involved, but it's going to be pretty light. Yeah. Because this is the thing, right? Like the other thing that I want to bring up is that if you do these sort of renders, they kind of look like very sterile. They don't have a lot of interest to them, right? And I think by making them move and by having like all those like moving elements to it, you make it super interesting to watch. You just need to be able to combine that with getting the information across in like a very easy manner, right? Because for breakdowns, I'm gonna write it down, right? Oh my god, what is this? I'm turning into a doctor. So for a breakdown, we actually need to focus on information over visuals, right? Whereas with your main image, it's the opposite way around, right? So just keep that in mind, that like if it doesn't look like super snazzy, like still prefer like something that doesn't look super snazzy but has like all the information that I want, compared to something that looks super snazzy but I'm missing information. So yeah, keep that in mind. So yeah, I would honestly not do like any of the additional renders, and maybe go back to the original plan where you had like multiple renders. I know it's kind of tricky. Maybe see, again, I don't know how easy this is, right? But maybe have just like a little turntable in the scene itself, right? Where like the asset moves. It could be really interesting just as like a presentation video. So yeah, you got some really cool stuff here. It's just scene itself like really sells it, right? And it's definitely going to be different if we see it like in the actual post, right? Where we have the main scene and the additional shots and the breakdowns. It's going to be a sequence to it too. But yeah, if you're thinking about that sequence, I would look at this section over here. Right, like one main image or like one or two main images, but in this case you only have a one, just fine. And 1, 2, 3 additional ones, and then like a couple of them for like the breakdowns. Right? Hey Adam! WIP Wednesday, let's go! Okay. I hope that was helpful, Joe. Yeah, let's see. Including the breakdown, UVs, texture breakdown, stuff like that. Yeah, that's basically over here, right? No worries at all. Then in the meantime, I'm actually gonna run off to the toilet real quick, so I'll be right back. Keep each other company in the chat, if you will. You know? Have a nice chat. What is this? This BE break is sponsored by? Oh my god. The Manscaped ad? I feel like for whatever reason, like most of the channels that I watch that go about games, like they have those kind of ads in them. It kind of looks really good. Yeah, the kind of looks awesome. Should gossip about Tim? What? And you can grab DaVinci Resolve for free. Yay! Yeah, I use DaVinci Resolve as well. We use it for the workshop editing too. It's so good. No, I'm not gonna say it because I don't want to jinx it. Just please remain free. Thank you. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for showing your work again, Joe. We're nearly there. I'm looking forward to seeing the final post, man. It's gonna be good. All right, next up we got Idith. Idith is back with this bunny murder scene. I'm assuming, if I remember correctly. Here's some progress I made with the scene. I focused on doing ornament trims and modular assets for the walls. Yeah, so we got like a nice looking trim over here with like bunny faces. That's looking awesome. Ooh, it's coming together. No, second favorite, don't say it. No, not Adobe. No. Especially with Canva like buying up Affinity now, and I'm just like, no, please don't do it. There's still a lot of things that I need to make and fix, but I wanted to ask for your opinion on how things look at the moment and what looks off. I feel like the pink lighting might be a bit too much. Oh, Yeah, the pink lighting definitely needs to be balanced a bit, right? But honestly, I would not worry about lighting at this point, because especially if you're using Lumen in Unreal Engine 5, it is very dependent on the textures that you're going to be using in your scene. So I would get like at least like the colors of your textures in before you start like really fine-tuning like the look and feel of your environment at this point. So lighting definitely needs work, right? But you knew that already. But I would say textures first. Really important that we get those textures in first. Ah, Adobe DaVinci. Ah, this hurts me. Oh. There aren't a lot of physically creepy elements added to the scene, but they will be added later once I finish the main bits. But I wanted the creepiness to come from the lighting and the atmosphere. However, I feel like the pink lighting might be a bit too much. Oh yeah, especially if you really want to set like a creepy atmosphere, right? You kind of have to go for like something like after closure, right? So you want to have like a creepy vibe, right? So lighting comes from the mood, or like is informed by the mood and the emotions, right? Like the emotions like linked to like the colors and stuff, right? So this all leads back to, basically goes around this way. Like the mood and our emotions and the colors all inform like what the lighting should look like, right? So if you want to go for a creepy mood, think about what is creepy for you, right? What are some of the horror movies that you watch? Like what kind of colors do they use and how do they portray like their imagery, right? So for example, if a very stereotypical thing, right? But if you were to have like a spotlight down here and it would like create like this very, very menacing like gas shadows like on the face of the rabbit, right? That would look creepy, right? Because that's what we use to if you hold like the torchlight underneath your chin and it kind of creates like this effect, especially in the dark. So think about those elements, right? Like what makes a creepy mood? And then I'm gonna say like darkness. I would also say like contrast between dark and light, right? And then probably like very blue tones, right? Like very blue / gray tones. That doesn't mean that your environment needs to be like only blue and gray, but you need to be careful with how you use like very uplifting, very interesting colors, right? So if you wanna use pink, you kind of have to use that in a different way then, right? So the main scene, I'm kind of looking at it as, let's see if we can find like an example here. I'm kind of looking at it more as like very bluish. Very, very desaturated. Oh, yeah. We're getting some good stuff over here. And this is just like front page stuff, right? So look at something like this. How creepy is that? I can imagine this bunny animatronic like in the dark with like subtle lighting at like the bottom section, and then just having like two like dim LEDs like still lit up in their eyes, right? Something like this, very evocative, like very strong emotional contact here, right? So what I'm immediately imagining this guy over here with like subtle LEDs on, but then just like very subtle lights, and we're just like looking at those eyes, right? But there's like more than enough options here, right? So just look at some of the imagery, right? Look at some inspiration here. Let's see. You see like a lot of like gray, bluish, very desaturated kind of tones, right? You could even play around with like, hey, I'm walking around with like a flashlight type of thing, right? So that you can imagine yourself as the person walking through like this environment with a flashlight in your hand. It'd be very interesting like opportunities for presentation here. So let's just snip like a couple of these, right? Let's just add them to the page. Oh yeah, this stuff is creepy. Like this stair especially. Ugh. This is so unsettling, man. It kind of also depends on what you want to do with your environment, right? Look here. Now we can't sleep tonight. You're welcome. I bet you that wasn't on your WIP Wednesday bingo card. Like just freaking not being able to sleep anymore. So yeah, playing around with like torchlight maybe, or like no, just having a look at it because I like how unsettling this feels already, like the slightly tilted head. Right? I think the lighting is definitely gonna help a lot with this guy over here. Yeah, I would say think about that. Yeah. Yeah, other than that, it looks really good. I like the shapes of the environment. I like how organic elements are like being added to the scene, right? Like everything has like a very nice and organic feel to it. So yeah, really well executed. I think these are all drawn by you as well, right? Let me just double check. I also attached some of the pictures of the concepts I made. Yeah, these are great. Lovely little concepts. Yeah, I love this guy as well. Even though he's probably not going to be the friendliest once you're done with the scene, but like I love him, you know? He's so cute. So cute. Thanks for the suggestions. I was imagining the scene taking place right before closure when everyone left the environment, but the maid is still hiding the victims. You could still use like the same concept that we talked about, right? And kind of have like assets that indicate that someone's cleaning up, but like the mop is like the mop has like a blood trail or something like that, right? You can do like interesting stuff with it, where you could almost, what is a good corner, right? So if you have like a corner where you could like see that someone has been dragged behind the curtains or something like that, and then you see like a bucket with water and the maid is like cleaning up. I'm not talking about the person being there, right? But just like the indication of it. You can do some really cool stuff with it. I like that idea. I think there's definitely potential, right? It just comes down to how you're gonna visualize it, right? Because at the moment, I would say if that is your go-to, if you want to make that visible, I would definitely try to put that into the environment first and for all, right? Like try to get the core elements in there, and then we can like keep building on the additional elements. Yeah, I love this though. Great work so far. I'm just curious what's going to happen in the future, because this has a lot of potential. Like I'm saying again, like I love the little concept that you made yourself as well. These are awesome. So, great work. All right. Let's jump on over to the next one then. Thank you so much for sharing this again, Alice. This is awesome. next person up is Sunny. Sunny, thank you very much. You're welcome. You are very welcome. Sunny, I think, let's see. How did... I realized that unclear planning before implementation, the project kept me stuck. So Sunny is talking about the previous project, right? Like the big castle that we had to scope down like drastically. I decided to launch a new plan, like a new project with a clearer purpose and plan. My focus on this project is focusing on practicing and learning about modularity and completing the first environmental project. Cool. Beautiful buildings in Habana, in Cuba. Very familiar with those. Very familiar. I tried to basically soak up like everything that I could get on those. Really interesting styles, really interesting like backgrounds to where they have like certain paints on their buildings. Really interesting like reuse. Probably less now, right? But during the embargo days, like they couldn't get like anything in. So there's a lot of opportunity to make it really interesting. Now, when it comes to your plan, right? Your plan is we're going to be constructing 2 main buildings, and then I want to make another 4 to 5 buildings that I will arrange in the scene. I would not do it, man. I would not do it. You're going to run into the same issue that you had before, because now I like the starting point, right? Way better than what we had before. But I have to keep hammering. Make 1 building. Make 1, please. Just make the 1. If that 1 looks really good, it's really easy to make a secondary one and like change up the paint and all that kind of stuff. But just stick to the 1. Please, it's gonna help you out so much. Especially because the reason why you are doing this one now is because the other one was like way too much overscoped and you kind of lost track on the whole thing, right? So I hate to do this, but just do like 1 building and make it look kick-ass, right? So number 1 is single building, right? Use that as a template. Because you can make a single building look really, really cool. You gave a good example last time, Tim. Share the link again. I'm honestly not too sure which link that was. Oh, was that the Q-Lock one? Oh my god, this creepy picture. Let's get out of here. Was it this one? I can't even remember. I'm just guessing. But this was going to be my go-to, right? Like, it's a bit advanced of a building, but this is 1 building, right? But this is a freaking cool building. So you don't have to do like multiple buildings. Just do like one building. More than enough. You don't need the trees. You don't need anything else. Just make a cool looking building. Yeah, it's a modular build. Yeah. This is the one. Yeah, so you don't need like all the foliage and all that kind of stuff. If you wanted to, just grab like mega scan trees, like add them next to it, but focus on 1 building. It's gonna save you so much time. No, not make this, but use this as a template. God damn it, Adam. So in terms... Yeah, even that 1 building took a long time. It's because they did a really good job of making something modular that doesn't feel modular, right? And that takes a lot of time. What I'm thinking with this is you just make 1 building. Like you make the front of it and don't even worry about like the back of it or anything like that. Just start there and then use that, right? As like a template. Because sometimes you just have to start small, right? And then build up. That's what I want you to do. Right? So 1 building. Now, I'm not going to keep hammering that point. You know how I get when it comes to this. So about your modular plan, right? Let's have a look. Because I had a look at it before the stream, and this makes sense, right? This is like a highly modular building. All the stuff that you added here makes sense to me. Yeah. You got the balconies, you got the balcony edge, you got like the floor. But that floor, yeah, so this floor is basically going to be like an overhang, right? Because it's not going to be like a main floor. So you would probably need to have like a floor in there somewhere. Like a full one, I mean. Because if you're going to have like windows that are open, you're probably going to see like the bottom of like the floor that's attached to this, right? So we kind of need to have a floor just as like a blocker, right? Second favorite. Running my bones, man. No, we're not doing 3 fucking buildings. We're doing 1 building. That's it. It's done. The thing is, like, I'm not saying this, right? And I just wanna hammer that point home, is that if you have 1 building, it is super easy to make 3 buildings. Especially with this. Right? Like, it is super simple. Because all you have to do is just change the color of your materials and then maybe do some slight tweaks. Sorry, this is why I'm second. Exactly. But yeah, you just need to do some, like a couple of tweaks, right? And then you have like a different looking building. But yeah, like you need to get to that finish point first, and then you can make it as broad as you want, but then at least you have something to show for it, right? That's what we're going for. Like, I oftentimes call it like the MVE. Right? It's like the minimum viable environment. It just means that you need to kind of know, like, what is like the minimum amount of work that I need to do to make this like looking really nice, right? And then if you want to expand on that, if you want to expand on the scope, please do that, right? If you're not bored of it just yet, please do it, right? That's what I'm doing with my scene as well. I can just keep working on it because I'm not tired of it yet. But what I want to avoid is that you get tired along the way, on the way of making like these 3 buildings, when in that same time you could have had 1 really good building that you could put on your portfolio. So back onto the modular kit. The modular kit makes sense, right? We also talked about like the floor a little bit. I would honestly start constructing these and then see what you're missing, because I think you probably want like some variations, right? Because you got like this ledge over here that's probably like different than some of the other ledges, right? So you're gonna have to build like a couple of additional variations that are currently missing. But honestly, just start building it and then see what you're missing, right? Keep it really simple. Keep it very very simple, just like the modules, no textures, nothing yet, and then build on top of it, right? Utilize weighted normals. I'm honestly, because this is very specific advice, right, for Sunny. And Aladdin brought up a good point as well. You can look into this construction script. I do not advise that for Sunny, because Sunny is like very early in the journey, so any additional tech stuff like doesn't make sense at this point. Same for weighted normals, right? Where that otherwise would be like really good suggestions. I would honestly like not look into that right now. Just keep it like really simple, straight to the point. Let's take like small steps and build up. I made a game level following from Thiago's Clafis course. Oh no, Aladdin, that's perfectly fine. Like you don't know about the context, right? So because they are good suggestions. They really are. Same for Hudson as well, right? Like really good suggestions, guys. Michael's saying I have 4 buildings, but all are made from the parts of the first one. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's why like modularity is really powerful, right? You just make sure that everything, basically your entire Lego kit works. And then once you kind of have it in a good state, then you can expand on the Lego kit if you want. Yeah. Focus on that MVE, that minimum viable environment. Yeah. Second. Breakdown itself looks great. Time to build, right? Just get building. Okay. I just wanted to say, Sonny, there might have been like some frustration, right, when making a decision to no longer proceed with like the previous environment. That's totally fine though. Like I've been there as well. Like my project, like Graveyard, is like, I don't know, so big at this point. But that's totally fine, right? It's all part of the journey, and you've learned like a bunch of valuable lessons out of that one, and I can see that already in this project. Even though you haven't even started molding yet, I can see that you realize that like, hey, the previous one was way too overscoped, so I'm gonna take it like really small now. Even though I had to say that you have to go a little bit smaller still, right? I love that you picked something that is like very focused on a skill that you think that you're gonna need, right? So great job there. Keep it coming, and best of luck. I love the planning, clean AF. Yeah. No need to do the sides and the back or even the top for now. No, exactly. Like I wouldn't worry about like anything else until you get the front of the building done. Because, I mean, if you really wanted to do it, right, like you just have the side of the building and you just make it like relatively simple, or what you could do actually is make a corner building with the same modules, and then you have like a corner building, right, and then you can see it from like a corner, makes it a little bit more interesting. Yeah. What are you doing, buddy? Playing with one of these toys. Three? I have that problem. I feel stuck. What are you stuck with, Eli? Let me know how I can help as we dive into the next bit over here. So, KZ, you're up next. Project is almost done. My question is about like completeness. Is the scene detailed enough? If not, how can it be improved? And which scene do you guys prefer to be the thumbnail? Okay. Okay. Let's have a look here. So, completeness, question mark, and then second one is the thumbnail. Is it true that environment artists suck at character design? Yes. That's why we're environment artists, right? Like, we shouldn't be doing characters. No way. Like, that's the thing, right? Like, especially in AAA, or with, like, any sort of, like, let's see. Unless you're in like really small indie companies, you have to specialize. And environment art and character art, both of them, like have the same sort of basics, right? You have to learn modeling, you have to learn baking, all that kind of stuff. But like the actual approaches and the actual workflows to get there are completely different, right? And the basics that you have to learn are completely different because, for example, an environment artist doesn't need to know like the anatomy, right? Like human anatomy is not a thing that we require as like environment artists. So it takes you a long time to become an environment artist. If you then tack on like character art on top of it, like best of luck, you know? Because you're in for a world of pain. And if you want to be proficient at both of them, right? There's something to be said about like branching out and like learning how to do different things. But if you want to do them proficiently at the same time, like, oh my god, yeah, no way. For me, switching from gangsters to after 9 years to environments was easy, to be honest. Oh shit. I can see that though. It kind of depends on what you do, right? But I can see that though. It also kind of depends on what kind of person you are, right? So for example, for me, I would suck as like a prop artist. Like focusing on like very detailed prop, like day in, day out, is nothing for me. I want to work on bigger stuff. I want to build like locations. I want to tell stories. Like I don't really have an interest in like focusing on the nitty gritty, right? Let someone else take care of that. And I feel like with a character, you're building a character which has like a lot of complexity to it too, but it's oftentimes focused on the nitty gritty rather than the bigger picture. At least that's my understanding of it. Sorry to ask an off-topic question, but can I not prepare translucent material layers? I added translucency and an opacity parameter to my master material, but my instance won't show it. I mean, that's a bit too specific. I would love to see like examples of that, but it's probably not going to be on the stream then. You can make like a translucent shader. Maybe the one thing that you need to do. Okay, this is the big thing. So, there's usually a difference between your master materials when it comes to this point, right? Because you usually have a master material that is made for like opaque surfaces. And you have a master material that's made for translucent surfaces. Because they have like a different domain that they're going to be rendered in, right? So look at that first. Look at like what your domain is set as, and like if it's not translucent, then that would be like a good indication, right? But you have to make like a new master material for that. Character artist is like weapon artist, but paying attention to micro details, but on steroids. I feel like that's a good way of looking at it. So the scene I'm stuck on, is the trees. They don't look good. I tried new methods like learning them all, but don't move forward like I want, and that discouraged me a lot. Okay, I'll give you a quick tip. Use Megascan trees. Sorry for my English. No worries. No problem at all. I would not, if you have a project that is focused on something else than trees, I would not try to make trees myself in the same project. I would completely separate that and make it like a different focus point. I separated out the two, but the master one for the material, the translucency shows it well, just the instance won't show it for some reason. Yeah, there's a lot that can happen there. Maybe it's linked to like the wrong master. Maybe the parameters are set differently. So yeah, best of luck. Throw it in troubleshooting. It's a stylized scene. Yeah, the art direction of the scene doesn't really matter. Oh, I can see. Yeah, you wanna. Yeah, I see why it matters. Well, okay, so to make it really simple again then, right, is you need to make the scene work without trees. And if the trees is like, if the scene is too reliant on the trees that you're making, it's maybe time to put it on the back burner and just focus on the tree specifically, or like do something else. I know it's very like, I'm trying to be like very cut and dry, right? But that's the way that I look at it. Like if you get really frustrated and it doesn't, and you're not going to be able to finish your scene, you need to find like a way where you can like work around the issue, right? Like we're problem solving in real time at that point. Let's have a look. Are you bilingual? Yes. Yeah. So I'm from Belgium originally, and I speak Dutch as like a native language, and then English is my second language. But yeah, there's also like a little bit of French, a little bit of German, a bunch of stuff in there. Is there a tree artist? Yeah. There are foliage artists, like people that specifically focus on foliage. Yes. We'll see if I can get it sorted somehow on my own for now. Don't want to bother any more people from their work. Yeah, I know that sometimes like it might be like a little bit dead in troubleshooting, right? Because it's so specific. But if you share like a bunch of images, like I can see if I can have some time in the near future. Hey Paul! Doing good, man. How are you? I feel like the trees are like the final piece for the scene. Well, then you just have to bite the bullet, right? Like, I mean, if we really simplify the whole process, right? And I'm trying to like really simplify it down, right? If the trees are like the final piece of the project, and you can't make it without the trees, and you can't use like someone else's trees, then it's either like continue working on the trees until they're good enough, or get rid of the project, right? There are going to be points in your like career, like in your artistic journey, where you just have to, yeah, I mean, bite the bullet, right? Or yeah, I mean, I want to say at this point you should have maybe like planned a little bit better, right? And not focus on so many things for a single scene, but that doesn't help like in the current state of the scene, right? So at this point, yeah, best of luck. I know, yeah, sorry. Sometimes I don't have better advice than just like bite the bullet and keep working on it. But yeah, ask for feedback though. Like ask people for help while doing so, right? Like you don't have to do this on your own. How's my Flemish? I'm native in Flemish. Like I can speak fluently Flemish. I see. Yeah. Oh, okay. People have been very helpful. Oh, okay, that's awesome. I saw your question from like a couple of days ago. But yeah. Did you know about a plugin called One Click Damage? I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it. Looks interesting, but yeah, I don't really have like any need for it. It looks cool though. Looks cool. KZ, let's have a look. My question is about the completeness, right? So let's talk about that first, because you were wondering about like if the scene is detailed enough. So I think this is a very interesting case of there's like not a real focal point, right? Like it's very open. Maybe the term that I want to use is like a little bit generic as well, because it's not focused on like a single story, right? it's not really focused on a single story. So we're just looking at like random. I'm trying to stay away from like these like very, very harsh words sometimes, but like I don't really see the connection between most of these images. Right? And that's why it probably feels like it's not complete, because it feels like very generic, because you focused on the scale of the scene rather than focusing on like the story of the scene. Right? So that's what it kind of feels like to me. It definitely feels like scale over story. Which has its own merits, right? It shows that you can make like a big scene and that you have like the willingness to like see it through. Right? But I think that also leans into like why doesn't anything feel detailed is because it really isn't. Right? Like there's no how would I word this better? Because it has like a nice base layer, right? It has like a nice foundation. But if you really want to push it to like the detail stage, like you have to really pay attention to like all the small bits of the environment, right? So for example, if we go into it, right? So attention to details. What is that? What does that mean with this? So the shape feels a little bit too blocky, right? I want to see like a lived in space. So like everything that's like super straight, we kind of have to figure out a way to like make it a little bit more crooked, right? That would be like the first pass. And then also, what is like the structural? I call this like giving the environment a character, right? Where we add like little bits to the silhouette and we kind of make it like sag and all nice. Second thing is like, what is the logic of this place? Like, what is its function? Because right now we're not really getting anything, right? Like normally what you would see in like a village is that you have like a food source, like where do they get their water, like where's the shop, like etc., right? Like buildings are supposed to have a function, but like most of these are just like very like they're modular buildings, right? But they don't break away from the modularity enough to have like an actual function, and that function usually gives us something to look at, right? Because then we could have like the local blacksmith or like the local fishery, and like they look differently. They have like a different shape to them. So it feels like very complete in a way where like it's lit really nice. It is executed well, right? Like I don't want to say that the assets don't look great. I think they do. And like the texturing on them also looks great, and the way that you compose the image, like it makes like a nice overall image, but it's not a complete one because it's missing like the logic and like the character and like the function of the buildings, right? So those are like two things that like I wanted to bring up there. And how can it be improved? Yeah, it's like, for example, what would be... I love this house. So let's see. Let me just add like a new layer, right? So we're going to start anew. Let's say this is close to the water. What are we expecting to see here? Right, like maybe we're kind of seeing like a bunch of fishing lines, right? So there's like a bunch of fish on here. And then maybe this guy has like netting around the building, right? Because he uses that to fish. And then maybe there's like a little corner where you can see like where the fish gets prepared. And maybe there's like a bunch of barrels where like the fish gets stored in to get salted or whatever. Right? And then maybe it's like this is not culturally like appropriate, right? There's probably going to be like more interesting stuff that you can find once you start doing some reference hunting. Yeah, you can make this house feel like really unique, right? By just adding like these elements. And maybe there's like a couple of fishing poles here. And now, by just adding like this additional layer of function, right? Like what the function of the building is, it makes it feel like way more interesting and it becomes like a more complete picture, right? Because now I can see like, okay, imagine that the river is like here somewhere, right? That's why this person is close to the water, because he's like the fisher guy from the village, right? So that's why he's close to water. Cool. Now, what's the functionality of the other buildings, right? You kind of start like figuring it out, like all these things, like all these like core elements where you can add things to it to kind of give them like a bit more, yeah, a bit more function, right? And that all adds to like how complete this environment feels, right? You got to take it like one step ahead. Let's see. Kind of gonna move like this little overpaint here. Right? So yeah, and which scene do you prefer to be the thumbnail? I think, who said it? There was someone who said like, oh, top right. See, yeah, Aladdin said that. I think I agree, Aladdin. I think for a thumbnail, I think the top right could work really well. Maybe something like this guy over here. Right, like something like that could be interesting. Maybe like a little bit more zoomed out so that you get more of the foreground. Or maybe... I think you can do something more interesting with this thumbnail, because I kind of want to have like the building and then like the road up, right? So that like the thumbnail like takes you somewhere. I think that could be like really interesting. Whoa. Those two could be cool. What I would also say, and this is like another thing that I want to bring up with this, is be selective about the images that you show off. I know that in all of these pictures you put like a bunch of time, right? That's like really visible. But there is definitely gonna be difference between a shot like this one and a shot like this one. Right? Like this one is like really well composed. Whereas this one just kind of feels like, yeah, I don't know. Like you can do way better than that. You know, so try to be more selective with the shots that you have on your portfolio, because your portfolio is only as good as your weakest piece, right? So you want to make sure that like the bottom, like the worst pieces basically are just, you just got rid of them, right? So be very careful about that. Yeah. That's all I had to say about this one, Casey. Great work. Nearly there. I love the progression that you had since last week as well. Yeah, just be really selective when it comes to like actually like having the work up there on your portfolio. But I'm curious to see it online. Let's do this. And then we got 3 more. Tom is first. Let's maybe switch it around. Let's start with round 1. So let's see. So Adam came in here, did like give some really good feedback as well. I want to know if there's any more feedback on the howitzer. I would honestly start baking, you know? Get cracking on it, man. It looks really good. I think, yeah, personal preference for me would have been like all the smaller stuff, right? Just keep that to Substance Painter as well. I think Adam was saying the same thing. Definitely would have done that here. There are some interesting pieces though, compared to last time, where you have like little dents and like little bits of bigger damage, which is looking cool. And then for the back of the wood, could I boolean it in 3ds Max and then with the low poly just add details I'm looking for instead of ZBrush? Let's see. I tried it in ZBrush and it would make it into a 3D model with the boolean from reference. I am not too sure what you're referring to. I'm assuming like doing the whole cut like this, right? Maybe some of these guys back here. If the rest of the object is like sculpted, right, and has like a ZBrush pass, like you would have to do it for this one as well. Yeah, especially if it's just about like cutting in a hole, right? If it's more about like these shapes here. Right, I would definitely take that through like a ZBrush pass though. Like just chip the edges, basically do the same sort of treatment as you do on like the rest of the object. And just do it on those things too. Although I'm not really sure that I understand like the second part of that section. So I tried it in ZBrush and it would make it into a 3D model with the boolean. Not too sure what that means. Yeah, I would definitely take like your time and try to make it like an actual high to low poly rather than trying to fake it in the low poly, if that's what you're thinking. So yeah, definitely take your time and basically have like an equal Hi name. I'm not new at environment design, but I know very less. How can I become a senior environment artist? By first becoming a junior one and then having a lot of experience in games. Yeah, the term senior just comes from having a lot of experience of actual production environment. So having all the games that you worked on. So you basically have to go through like the seniority levels, which is like junior, intermediate, senior, and then potentially principal or like lead, whatever you want to go for. So yeah, the only thing you really need is yeah, experience enough so that you can get like your first job, and then it's more about like experience working on games. But yeah, definitely keep it to like equal treatment, right? Like Because you've put so much time and effort into like all the rest of it, it would be a shame that you try to cut corners by like only doing like a low poly on like some elements, right? So yeah, take your time, man. Take your time and finish it properly, especially at this stage, right? I can really tell that you put so much time and effort into it. Can you recommend me courses? There's a good one from Thiago Klafke that a lot of people are doing. Otherwise, look at CGMA. They offer like really good courses as well. But yeah, round one. There's nothing else that I wanted to add. I think last time even I struggled a little bit, so I think just I want to see textures, you know? I want to see baked, I want to see textures. Like that's the stage that I'm at. Like, let's go, you know? Let's do it. Okay, and then we're moving straight on to Tom. Tom is working on his industrial sci-fi miner machine. And in the past 2 weeks, I've been delving into various options for in-engine texturing. I decided to start with second UV and RGBA masking workflow. I wanted to test my new skills on something similar before retexturing the truck, so I made this container using the workflow I plan to use for the truck. I modeled it with mid-poly workflow in mind, with single segment bevels and weighted normals. I went with 3 UVs, one for the tilables, one for the RGBA mask, and one for the details. Yeah, sure. I'm not too sure why you would need like a separate UV for that. If it's mapped to a different material, right? But okay. I then made some single masks I thought would be useful in Painter. I modified those with noises and leaks alphas into shaders to get the final results. Am I doing it right? Would this be the way to get the texture for the truck? I wanted to go a bit further, say add more specific details. Okay. Yeah, this would be definitely the way to go, right? Like definitely way more performance. Let's see, I didn't understand. Can you write here, please? Yeah, sure. Let me take a little bit of time. So, CGMA and those are like two people that I would like. Well, CGMA is more like a platform, and then Thiago Klafke is actually like a person that does like a really good like stylized environment art course. So yeah, I think you're definitely on the right track, Tom. I think the only thing that I was saying before is just like, I don't know why you need like a third UV just to do bolts if those bolts are just like a different texture, right? Because you have like your first layer is like tidables, right? So those are all like different material slots, right? So why not do like your bolts as like a different material too? Right, so that would just be like a different material instance. But other than that, like this seems good, man. So we kind of got like all the masks in, which is good. Oh, it's going on sale tomorrow, Young Crisp. Dang, hold off on that one then. And I'm working on realistic stuff. Yeah, then just go check out like CGMA. They have like a bunch of really cool courses for realistic environments as well. Yeah. This is looking good, man. It's looking good. The only thing that I would say is that some of the bevels are like a little bit small. Right, so for example, on like the sides here, like this is really sharp. So you would probably have to increase like your bevel just a little bit. Because yeah, like you definitely need to be more optimized, right, in games. But because you use the mid-poly workflow, you have to, again, add like a bit more geometry than the base game art workflow. I know it's getting a little bit confusing because you don't have like the base game art workflow yet, right? Because you come from VFX. So, yeah. So I would say like these bevels are like really sharp. These bevels are okay. It's just the really sharp ones, right? Like these guys. Maybe some of these guys as well. Kind of depends on what you have, right? Yeah. Yeah, definitely, honestly, like really, really good. Like, really good switch already. You know? I think you can be proud of this result just by itself. And I think you got like a really good base to then apply this to the truck as well. If I wanted to go a bit further, so let's say add more specific details like directional scratches and purposely placed leaks, how would I go about that? Decals? Yeah. So for decals, there's a couple of ways that you can do it, right? I think when it comes to these sort of surfaces, you want to have like mesh decals specifically. So they're just like an additional layer of geometry that you add on top of it that are just like mapped to like leaks or whatever you need, right? Rather than projected decals. You could kind of use both, but like the reason why I'm saying projected one, well, mesh one specifically, is because they... Oh, so just slightly wider bevels, not more geo? No, I would say for these guys, geo. Well, no. I'm not sure actually. So usually what I would say is when it comes to face weighted normals, right? You need to have a bevel there somewhere if the surface is big enough, right? So for example, these guys, I would expect them to be soft by themselves, so I would actually just do them with geometry. But then for some of these like more like tight ones, right, that usually are not soft by like their nature, I would then use like a texture like you're doing now, right? I think that sells the illusion just enough. But with some of these guys, like you need something to break up that sharp edge. And it is honestly like the trickiest thing when it comes to like the mid-poly workflow, right? Is like you need bevels with like face weighted normals to kind of have like these smooth surfaces. But sometimes you can't really have that. Hold up, let me explain that better. So on some surfaces that are small, right, you can't really have that, and then we have to fake it in a texture again, like you're doing. I think you just need to, yeah, increase like the geo on some areas. Can you recommend me some full environment art creation courses? No, I think honestly like Google is a better example there. I gave you CGMA already, right? They have like really good courses for really specific things. When it comes to like full environment creation courses, there's so many like options out there when it comes to so many different aspects as well, that it is such a broad topic that I can't suggest like a single tutorial that does all of it really well. That's why I recommend CGMA instead. Got it? Yeah, makes sense. Awesome. Yeah, honestly, great work here, man. Great work. Yeah. That's about it from my side. I'm curious how this is gonna apply to like the main truck. Yeah, let's see. So what did we say last? It was like... the balance between geo and texture. Right, that's the last thing we discussed. Yeah, no worries, Tom. Lovely work. Looking forward to see this translated to the truck as well. That's going to be an undertaking, and I honestly didn't expect you to do it, right? Because I think we talked about that before. But I love it nonetheless, man. I'm really excited to see this like applied to like the truck itself. It's going to be awesome. Okay, there's actually one more person, but we couldn't add them to the stream because it was already pretty late. And I was also like pretty busy before the stream too. So we're just gonna do it right here. So this is a project from Maya, I think. The names are obscured because I'm streaming currently, but let's see. Took a 2-week break for not posting to sort some things and much needed, and taking a break from not much needed work. Yeah, do it. Get a break. The special machine is almost done. The only thing I'm missing is a bit more realness. I'm still struggling with the glass material, so I will study that until next week. Oh, sorry, next week WIP, and add the rest of the textures. Okay, cool. Making some good progress though. We're getting there, we're getting there. It's a complex machine as well, right? So, I mean, this is gonna take a little bit of time to get it right because it is very challenging to get this done to like a reasonable degree, right? If I can give you like a reference, if you look at caps, if you look at Anna Watts's work, she has like a beautiful coffee machine. I am gonna link that in your thread. Yeah, this one is really cool. It shows you like what you can do with like the texture layering, especially, right? There's some really nice details in there. You don't have to go as like grimy or dirty, right? But it can be like really good insight on like how much layering you can add. But yeah. Let's see, some other questions. Do I follow the rule of thirds for the shelf shot? I'm gonna be honest, do we need the shelf shot? I don't think we do. I'm really honest about it. I feel like honestly, like Okay, so this is the main shot, right? Okay. This is an interesting one, right? Because I don't actually think we need multiple shots. Because there's not enough variation, especially between these two, to warrant like a completely different camera setup, right? Or like a completely different shot. So I would maybe get rid of the wide shot. And then... or maybe have like a blend between the two. Because it is nice to have the shelf there. Like at least a little bit. Let's see. But yeah, like it basically comes down to if the different shots are like varied enough, right? I'm gonna let you decide on the shelf shot and the main shot, but I think the difference between the wide shot and the main shot is definitely not big enough, right, to warrant like a different camera angle. But do I follow the rule of thirds for the shelf shot? Well, this is where it gets tricky, right? Because if you want to do like the rule of thirds, we need to have like a focal point. Like, what are we looking at? Right? We need to actually make something stand out from the shot. And we can do that by like maybe going in closer and focusing on like one of the Let's say that we pick this as like a focus point, right? We can do that, but then we would have to like move in and have like a close-up shot from like the actual shelf or something like that, right? Like a little bit closer. That could be cool. Oh, I just realized that my notes are like kind of being cut off. So let's try this. Yeah. Maybe a close-up of the shelf would be cool, and then we can follow the rule of thirds, right? Because right now we can't really do it because we're so far back that we need to pick basically a spot where we're gonna focus and then try to like compose like an interesting image around it. Is damage the only way of adding realness to hard surface models like this? I want to avoid making my models look like they're falling apart, especially the espresso machine. What are some other methods? Oh, yeah. This actually ties perfectly back into like Hannah's work, right? It doesn't have to be damage, but like a look at just like the stains of like someone like trying to clean the machine, but they kind of did it like in a hasty manner, so it kind of left like some stains, right? That's a really cool way of doing it. You don't have to go as heavy into the rust. You can definitely be like more subtle with like the layers, right? What I would do is, if you have a coffee machine yourself, it doesn't really have to be like the same one, but just look at it, right? Like look at it under like different lights and see where all like the smudges and smears and like little bits of dirt and like where everything just collects, and use that as reference to make more, well, a less damaged but like more realistic version, right? You're in control over how much damage you want to add, and the damage doesn't need to come from like, or like the realness doesn't need to come from the damage. Yeah. You wanna study like surfaces, right? Study things, like actually look at them. Like, oh, if I look at this bottle, right? Like, what am I seeing? If I look at a glancing angle, like I'm seeing fingerprints and like smudges and like little scratches on the glass, and you can see a lot of stuff if you start paying attention. So I would do that, and like really look at some of the surfaces that come really close, because there's gonna be dirt and grime on it, even though it doesn't need to be broken. What are some other methods? Yeah, I would definitely say look at real life ref. The closer you can get to actually looking at the thing that you're trying to create, the better. But I think you can definitely start out with something that has like similar surfaces, and then just look at like how they interact with like people interacting with them. And the last question is, I wanted to add more shots for my eventual post on ArtStation. Do you have any recommendations on what angles I should render? Yeah, so I would only do, like, you would have like your main shot. You would have your main shot, and then maybe like a detail shot on the shelf. And then maybe like a coffee machine shot, like a detail one. And that's it. Like these are like your main renders, and then the rest of it I would just do like breakdowns. Like show us how you made these things, right? Show us how you made it, because it's never about like the amount of images. It's about the quality of those images. So like I'm already saying like, nope, this wide shot is not going to happen because it's too similar to what we already have, right? And that's what you have to do for yourself when it comes to finding interesting angles, where you're like, oh, this one is different. It shows off like maybe details from like the texturing that I'm going to do on the coffee machine, and it's different enough from like the rest that it's worth adding, right? That's the way that I would look at it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see what you're gonna do. Keep it up. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the glass come in and like the lighting also be like a bit more explored as well. It's gonna be great. Okay. And I think it's gonna be it for us today. Such a beautiful variation of work again. Love it. Love it. Yeah, so for people that are new, that don't know how this works, right? Is basically I've been going through like a bunch of the community members and like what they post on Discord. Like you can choose whether you want to get featured on the stream or not. And then I'll add like all the overpaints and like all the images that we created today into your like WIP thread so that you can like continue working on the basis of that feedback. We did it! Great job, everyone! Hell yeah! Yeah, and thanks for being here, people. Always appreciate it. Thanks so much for the good questions and the good banter. I'm gonna keep it pretty short because yesterday we also did like portfolio reviews and then today as well, so I'm gonna log off now. Maybe grab a thing to eat and then just chill out for a little bit. So yeah, thank you all for being here. If you want to become a member, you know where to look. Go check out like the links in the description. And yeah, I'll see you soon for more feedback and more people's artistic journeys. Bye-bye.